Hello, everyone. My name is Sheldon Callahan. I'm with the developer experience team. I see a lot of familiar faces in here. Just kind of housekeeping before we get started. Silence your phone if you haven't already. Download the app for the survey. And we'll get started. So this next talk I'm really excited about. I'm excited about all the server content. I know a lot of you have been asking for that. So Pavel is an architect on the Jira Server team, and he's going to be talking about Jira Server 8. A little fun fact, I've been asking for fun facts from all the people on my track, is that he's been with the company for about 5 years, and this is his first Atlas camp. So I'm going to introduce him without any further ado. Pavel.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So my name is Pavel Bugalski. Again, I'm working with Jira Server, and I'm going to tell you today about Jira Software Server 8.0. Yeah, and I'll talk about why we decided to do the platform release right now. So what was our motivation there? How we are approaching it? So what we're doing in order to achieve our goals, and then I will tell you a bit about changes, the actual changes that we are doing, and how those changes are going to affect you and your apps. And then I'll give you a rare glimpse into our future, into what's our strategy, that how we're going to build upon 8.0. Okay, so let's dive into the first part, where we're going to talk about the motivation and actual changes happening in Jira Software 8.0. And we already heard during the keynote, I think Juni did a great job at describing the scale that our customers have and how they're growing very fast. So I probably will not do as good of the job, but I'll try. So 23% is a growth year by year in the issues, in a number of issues in the largest instances of our customers. But that's only an average, and it doesn't tell the whole story. So, for example, one of the biggest customers has grown by 197%, and they're adding 300,000 issues to their instance a month. So it's a lot, and that's not everything. So traffic is another factor in how hard it is to use your instance. And if it's growing 33% year over year, then you can imagine what's the impact on the customers. And do you know what this number is? It's a number of issues, and that's obvious, but is it a lot, or is it just enough, or maybe not so much? So it turns out that 2 million issues is a boundary, and if you cross this boundary, we start to think about the customer as a really large customer, and there are more such indicators of size, like 4 million comments, 2,500 projects, 100,000 users. And if you cross any of those, then you're a really big customer. But large customers can have twice that many issues easily, or even more. And really think about it. When you're testing your apps, you can find this article that will help you, tweak the data set that you're testing your apps with to really represent the actual customer there, because there are customers who have that large instances. And in order to be able to build for the future, where scale is really important part of this future, we're building this foundation with Jira 8.0, and really it's about upgrading our platform and introducing upgrading libraries and making sure that we are working with the like with the like with the APIs like okay. So what I'm trying to say is basically that we deliver with all every feature release we deliver value to the customers, but from time to time, like we're making sure that we're not breaking your apps with those feature releases. We're trying hard not to break apps, but sometimes in order to grow, we need to make changes that will break your apps. And this is the opportunity. 8.0 is an opportunity to make a change and build for the next feature releases that will bring value to our customers. And there are like 3 main pillars that we identify that we'll try to do in 8.0 in order to address what we need to do. Like Lucene upgrade, important part of Jira, upgrading some other libraries, and then improvements to Frontend. But before I go into details here, I would like to remind you about Early Access Program. So there are already builds available for Early Access Program for Jira 8.0. So make sure to download them download them and try them, because if you test them, you might find out that you're fine. You don't have to do anything, because we are trying not to do any unnecessary changes, unnecessary breaking changes. So we're trying to make sure that this is as painless as possible. But you might also find that you need to update your plugins in order to support Jira 8.0, and really like planning it right now. It's a good idea to be able to prepare for any changes that that might be coming. And if you read preparing for Jira 8.0 documentation on Dev Community, then you might learn that there are things that you need to do right now. And also, if you encounter any problems, that would be really awesome to get feedback from you, so that we can improve and make sure that this release is very good for everyone. Okay, so jumping into the pillars. First of all, what is Lucene? So Jira has this powerful search capability, and really Lucene is a open source library that's behind search in Jira. And if you use JQL or Agile boards or service queues or dashboards, you're internally running your queries against Lucene. And we identified Lucene as one of those places, like search subsystem, as one of the places where we need to invest in order to scale, to enable scale for Jira and enable also data center to scale. And I'm very excited because like version of Lucene we have currently in Jira 3.3 is 7 years old, and it's a really huge jump for us to go directly to 7.4, the latest version. And the story here behind Lucene in Jira is it's interesting, because Lucene was there from the beginning. And one of the challenges we have with it is that some aspects of Lucene has leaked to the Jira's API, and really we got stuck at this 3.3 version of Lucene, because after this version, Lucene itself started to break their APIs in order to clean them up, and we didn't want to see the impact on the ecosystem, so we kind of stuck with this version. There were attempts to fix this problem by moving Lucene-related APIs to a separate module, Jira Lucene DMZ, but they didn't fully address the problem. And with Jira 8, we're bumping Lucene in Jira, and that means that there's a work to do. So there is an impact on the ecosystem. But on the other hand, we think that the benefits there are like outweighing the costs here. And after the bump, the new capabilities of Lucene are available to both us, but as well to your apps. So if you're using Lucene in your apps, you can use the new capabilities. And in the future, we can build on this new version, making sure that the Jira is more is more scalable, and maybe your apps also are like faster and more powerful. And what so what we get? So Lucene is still available to your apps, so you can still, I know that some apps are using Lucene directly extensively, so you still can do that. Obviously, some of the APIs changes, so there's work to be done, but like we didn't hide Lucene from you. We were getting a lot of improvements, so there are like over 4,100 improvements, bug fixes, performance improvements in Lucene, and we are unlocking the door to the future. So some of the things we can do will be much easier in the future. Lots of things have changed, but I would like to maybe highlight some most important ones. So first of all, if you're implementing your own custom fields, you might find that the way you define fields in Lucene has changed. So there used to be a single verbose constructor that require you to really fine-tune what kind of a field are you creating. Right now, you get much simpler constructors for many different field types, and you have to choose the proper field type for you, which might be, for example, string field or text field. And it's much easier to get a proper field type. Also, if you're implementing your own custom field searchers, then if you're doing more complex queries, you might find that BooleanQuery is now immutable, and you need to use a builder to build it. So this is a kind of a straightforward change, but might impact a lot of you. If you're using more expert APIs of Lucene, so going deeper, there's even more changes there. So the APIs for collectors have changed. There are changes to the way you iterate over terms. This change is actually for better, I think, personally, because the code you get if you use the new APIs is much clearer and much more understandable. So code is better, but yeah, the work has to be done to transform this code. And finally, we are leaning into the opportunity, and we're changing the issue index structure a bit. We stopped storing some frequencies and positions for fields that didn't really need that. So that's contributing a lot to the index size. So hopefully even halving the index size. Another thing is the way we store dates. Rather than store them as strings, we're going to store them as numbers. And that also will contribute to a smaller index, but it also means a faster range queries across dates, which should be a benefit for the users. But that's just an example of where you could also use the new APIs in Lucene to make your apps faster if you use any of those more expert APIs. But I won't go into depth more about Lucene because we have another talk about it. Our Kamil will tomorrow at 10 a.m. Go deep into what actually the new Lucene is bringing. Okay, going forward to the platform upgrade, which is really about bumping libraries with the main goal here to reach compatibility with Java 11. And notice that we are adding JAX-B to the platform. I'll talk about it later a bit more. So what we're getting new Spring, new Guava. You can use those APIs, new APIs in your apps with VAPs right now. But we are also enabling Java 11 support. And the main goal here is for Jira 8.0 to work with Java 11. We're not announcing compatibility yet, so we have time to prepare your apps. But again, please download the APIs and try to do that, because this compatibility is coming, and the faster you plan to adapt your apps, then the better. Okay, and some things that you might find impact you that I would like to highlight is we did a bit of a cleanup of plugin system API. So that means if you're using more expert features like dynamic modules or stuff like that, you might find that you need to tweak your code. The good news is that everything all the capabilities are still there, and everything is possible with Jira 7 already. So there shouldn't be a problem with backwards compatibility here. Interesting thing that kind of results from Spring update is that the old method of creating components goes away because it was based on Spring's capability to do the auto detection of the method of injection. So it could be either constructor injection or parameter-based injection, and the rules there were really not clear. So Spring is removing this auto detect method, and we're going to use constructor injection from now on. But we're also adding a way to use annotations like autowire and inject to kind of bring back the old behavior and have a parameter-based injection. And another thing that's kind of related to Spring update is the fact that Spring is now looking for more dependencies of the component in the class loader of a plugin. And that means also the dependencies that are far removed from the component. For example, if your component implements an interface and that interface is extended by another one, then Spring will read this another interface from your class loader, and you need to make sure that your OSGI imports are there in place, which is easy fix, but not obvious problem if you see that, and hard to maybe investigate. So just pointing that out. And as I mentioned before, JAX-B is added to platforms, so we are shipping 2.3, and that means that you don't have to worry about JAX-B being available in Java 11, which is it's removed from Java, and that's why we're going to ship it in the platform. And the same version will be available in Jira 8 when run with Java 8 and Java 11. Okay, going to the front-end stuff, and basically front-end is important in terms of how performant is the application for our customers. And we think that by making sure that our front-end is lean, we can make sure that Jira works fast for the actual users. And what we're doing in front end are two main things. We're bumping jQuery from 1.9 to 2.1, and the good news is that we were keeping the compatibility library there, so that you can move your apps to the new jQuery successfully in stages. Another thing, basically jQuery gives us obviously we're moving closer to the newest version of jQuery, but also we're addressing a number of security issues there. With the deprecating globals, what we're trying to achieve is to make sure that because currently, if you try to use anything in a front end, you kind of there's no API, and you end up using all the globals as your API, and that means that anything we add there, it stays there forever, and that's really not good in terms of making sure that the batches, context batches, and super batch stays small. And by deprecating globals, we are starting the way for reducing the size of frontend. But that means also that apps have to switch from using globals to AMD modules. And I know that some of you might be afraid that we will remove globals right away and your apps will stop working. That's not going to happen. What we're going to do is we're going to remove them in batches, and we will announce any removal, and we'll give you time to do your work here. But just this is a heads up that this is our commitment to make sure that that globals are going away. Okay, and we're switching to a second part where I would like to talk a bit about our strategy, now about our thinking, what we can build based on 8.0 platform. And a disclaimer, that's not a roadmap, that's not a promise that we'll deliver, but rather a way to describe our thinking, what we're thinking, and how we are approaching the future of Jira. So we know that a lot of our customers use archiving. They already use it with the projects, and they like it. They like it, but we also know that it's hard for some of our customers to archive entire project, even if most of the issues in this project are already obsolete. So one way to address that is to make sure that we can archive only certain issues in a project, and we're looking into doing just that. We're also looking into making sure that you can get your relevant issues easily. And for example, even if they're archived, you might need some time to access them. So being able, for example, to search for archived issues is one of the things we're thinking about. But really, if you think about it, we are adding a lot of APIs around archiving. And I would like you to think about how you can use those APIs to build interesting new features into your apps that are based on archiving, but also think about what does it mean that the issue is archived, and how your app can, what does it mean for your app, and how your app will display archived issues, and how it will interact with archived issues. Another thing I would like to talk to you about is faster agile boards. So we know that if you ever work with a really large backlog, it can take time for agile board to load. But actually, I don't know if you are aware that some of our customers can have like over 100,000 issues in their backlog, and that's a lot. And no that shouldn't be the case. Like no human can work with that number of issues. Even if we can display them, no one will really work with them meaningfully. So our solution to that is to do something like that. Like, let's hide some of those issues and really display the issues that are relevant and the issues that the customer, the user really wants to work with. And that means the top of the backlog, which is the next sprint, and the bottom of the backlog, which are the newest issues that are coming to the backlog. And then we show that some of the issues were removed and maybe option to show more. But really think how your app, if confronted with too much data to really display, can really help user find the most relevant information and really filter out what's unrelevant and focus on what's important. Another area that we are looking at is scaling. And this is a data center architecture in a glass. So we have a load balancer that's talking to a number of nodes. We have nodes are talking to the database, and we have a shared file system, network connected file system. So we think that really ability to add more nodes here is a most important right now, the thing that would benefit our customers the most. And when I'm saying about, like, when I'm talking about adding more nodes, I'm thinking about adding a lot of new nodes. So how can we do that? This is where we think we need to improve, like do the improvements to search subsystem. So for example, right now, if the issue is created or modified, then what happens is each of the nodes has to download all the data about the issue, and then it has to prepare, modify its local copy of the Lucene index. And that itself cannot really scale that much, so that's one of the places where improvements could be done. Also, what we are thinking about is auto-scaling. So basically, not only ability to add more nodes when the traffic requires that, but also reducing the number of nodes so that the customer can save on the infrastructure. So there are cost saves to be had. And the third thing I would like to talk to you about is how can we use those additional nodes. So there is a limit to how much the addition of more nodes can scale, really improve the performance for the user. But really, if you think about it, it's not only about the performance, it's also about the availability. And dedicated nodes, like we know that our customers are already using those dedicated nodes to make sure that their cluster is much more stable. So the question is, how could your app benefit from such a dedicated node, and how your app could use those dedicated nodes to do maybe some kind of a complicated report there, or some maybe risky stuff in a way that is separated from the user traffic. Another area is the performance in geographically distributed instances. So to describe the problem, if you think about scale, like really large organizations will be spread around the world. And currently, if you have your data center in the United States, everything's fine as long as your users are in the United States. But the further your users are from the data center, the slower the worse their experience is. And that's because of latency, and that's because the speed of light is what it is, and you cannot really fight it. So our solution for that is to add a proxy servers in a data center, like the customer could put proxy servers in a data center close to their users. And that means that those proxies can, help with the operations that's sensitive to latency, like terminating SSL connections, TCP handshakes, and so on. But also, we could cache static resources there, and that means that the initial page load could be much faster. But that means a support from apps. So just a reminder, if you still didn't switch to the new way of doing transformation of resources, please do, because that's needed for caching the resources. And basically, that means that any transformation or condition on a resource cannot use the state of the instance. So it shouldn't look at a user who's downloading the resource, nor the locale, nor any other information. And there's a page that describes the new transformers, URL reading transformers, and URL reading conditions. That basically, if there is a state that needs to be used when doing the transformation, then the state can be encoded in a URL. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you about in terms of what we're thinking about is it's another place where scale is biting our users. Is if you think about the growth of the traffic, it does not only mean that the number of data is growing, but it means that also the amount of change that happens on the system is growing. And that means that if I see my notifications in my mailbox, they grow with the number of other users that are using the instance that I'm using. And really what we are thinking about here is how can we reduce the volume of those notifications by batching the notifications together. And again, that means that you can get a more relevant information. So, for example, if you work in an organization and some of your teams are in a different time zone, and you really don't care about specific changes, what you care about is information at the beginning of the day, what the other team was doing during the night. And also by enabling modification of email templates, you can get more relevant information right there in your notification. And that means either adding some information there or removing something that's not really relevant. And the third thing is with mobile coming to server, there are new ways of working on the go, really. And I would like also you to think about how your apps could use this new platform in the future, and really feedback about that would be really important for us. And yeah, that's it. We talk about why we're doing, like how, like scale of our customers is really something that pushes us to make this platform release where we invest, build a foundation to invest in the future of Jira. Thank you.
Awesome. So if there's any questions, you're welcome to ask. If we run out of time for questions, then you can ask in the hall. This is our last talk of the day, so thank you for joining us, and we'll welcome any questions.
And just repeat his question back when he asked.
Go ahead.
Are there any plans to cope with Oracle's new release policy for Java?
So the question is, are there any plans to cope with Oracle's new, could you repeat?
Release policy for Java.
Release policy, yeah. So That's a good question. Right now, like we're observing the situation as it unfolds, and we didn't decide it yet. We didn't commit it yet. So, but we are aware of that, and we are looking into how we can adapt to this new situation. Definitely, like Java 11 support is coming because we want new features there, but like whether it will be OpenJDK, which brand of OpenJDK, how are we going to solve support issues and stuff like that? That's something that it's not only us who is deciding, but I think everyone's deciding in the community around Java. And I think we'll learn soon like what emerges from this opportunity, and that will impact our decision.
Is there any plan to archive the Jira database, like something dumping all the archived projects into a system XML backup and then hard delete from a database?
Mm-hmm. So the question is, are there any plans to archive issues in a database? Yes.
When the database grows like over 50 GB, 70 GB, then it will become very harder to take native backup.
So yeah, with the growth of database, it's harder to take backups and stuff like that. So, and also it impacts performance as well. Current solution with archiving is based on removing issues from index. So that helps with things like reindexing and helps with maintenance of index. Like the nodes can be smaller because they don't require that much of a memory. And yeah, we are thinking about how we can address this problem that you described, but we didn't decide about anything yet.
Any other questions?
We are upgrading Lucene more often from now on, or we rely on this version of Lucene for the number of nodes from
Okay, so are we going to upgrade Lucene starting from now? Like I said before, like still the problem of some of the leakage of the API remains, and that's why I don't think we will take this like upgrading lightly. So we probably will need to base our decisions on a case by case basis, and I would say depending on what's the change in Lucene, we're either like we would like to be aggressive here, as we were before 3.3 happened and then we stuck, but we will also think about the impact on the ecosystem here. So we're not taking this kind of decision lightly, definitely.
One more question.
Mm-hmm.
In current state, if we increase more node in a data center, so it is become a more overhead for inter-node index traffic.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is going to solve with Jira 8, like after upgrading the Lucene.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the question is, if we're adding more nodes to the cluster, then inter-node communications related to indexing are causing problems, and will ADO help with that? So the answer is like no, because we're not addressing this problem yet. So this is like ADO is building a foundation. We're bumping the library. It might help a bit, but it does not address the problem. What we want to do is we want to build on this new library and ADO platform to address the problem.
Yeah, in current scenario, like one of the instances like we have is a huge concurrent traffic, and if we scale beyond 3 or 4 nodes,
Mm-hmm.
it become a even slowdown.
Okay, so like you have a instance where you have a large modifying traffic, not reading traffic, but rather modifying traffic, and then you're blocked by this.
Yeah, we are not getting any benefit like after
Yep.
increasing beyond like
Yeah.
3 nodes.
So as I said, like in a part when I was talking about the future for Jira, this is one of the areas that we are looking at and we would like to address. Ability to add more nodes would require us to do changes to search subsystem in order to be more efficient in exactly this kind of situations. But that's not something we are doing with 8.0.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for coming to this talk. Please fill out the survey and tell us how we did, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks.